Is it working? All right, great rising. Great rising. Peace and power. We're gonna take this link to Facebook. Give me 1 second. All right. See your girl on time and shit. I mean, in things. Great rising. Peace and power. All right. Let's see. The Celestine prophecy. All right, hold on. Need you to share this and so you can get people to come and follow my YouTube. I'm like 92 followers away from being able to go live from my mobile device, which means that the clarity and the signal will be better. So help me out. If I'm out here sounding like Barry White, no, I'm not eating fucked up. Great rise and peace and power. I'm out here sounding like me and Mrs. Jones got a thing going on. It's from cussing out the children. Okay. I'm currently in care of 7 of the motherfuckers. 7. Okay. And 2 of them play football and 2 of them look like they eat football players. If they heard me talking shit, they'd be like, "Mom." All right, so let's do this. I'm gonna share my Patreon because I will be on YouTube occasionally. All right. But if you want to stay with me over the course of this book and many others, you can suggest them. Like I love reading and I'm currently on my TV fast, if you don't know. So I got time. Now niggas ain't got time for that. I got time for that. So yeah, the Sacred Woman link is for the look at there, you came through. Aw. All right. All right, that's peace. Okay, let's do this. I'll get carried away with my rambling. But I shared the link that way if you want to listen to the remainder of the Celestine prophecy and other books like The Life You Were Born to Live or Nutricide, which is what we talk about a lot, or the complete terror spreads, all of them. All right. The Way of the Orisha. A lot of the things that I'm listing off, I may have read already on Peace and Power. I may have already read on Facebook. So if you're not in a position yet to have your coins together, because it's $9 a month, and I'll read at least 3 times a week. Ideally, 2 chapters for the Celestine prophecy a week so that we finished in 1 month. All right, let me get on to it though. If you got any questions, inbox me, email me, message me, text me. Just don't call me, goddamn. I don't answer. Ah, shit, I know Adrian like that motherfucker ain't never lied. Now she ain't gonna call you, let you text her and tell her you on fire. Shit, that's the only way. Is you bleeding or on fire? All right. The Celestine Prophecy. All right. An Adventure by James Redfield. All right. Uh Contents. A Critical Mass. We'll start at the author's note. For half a century now, a new consciousness has been entering the human world, a new awareness that can only be called transcendent or spiritual. If you find yourself reading this book, then perhaps you already sense what is happening, already feel it inside. It begins with a heightened perception of the way our lives move forward. We notice those chance events that occur at just the right moment and bring forth just the right individuals to suddenly send our lives in a new and important direction. Perhaps more than any other people and any other time, we intuit higher meaning in these mysterious happenings. We know that life is really about a spiritual unfolding that is personal and enchanting, an unfolding that no science or philosophy or religion has yet fully clarified. And we know something else as well. We know that once we do understand what is happening, how to engage this elusive process and maximize its occurrence in our lives, human society will take a quantum leap into a whole new way of life, one that realizes the best of our tradition and creates a culture that has been the goal of history all along. The following story is offered toward this new understanding. If it touches you, if it crystallizes something that you perceive in life, then pass on what you see to another. For I think our new awareness of the spiritual is expanding in exactly this way, no longer through hype nor fad, but personally, through a kind of positive psychological contagion among people. All that any of us has to do is suspend our doubts and distractions just long enough, and miraculously, this reality can be our own. Chapter 1, A Critical Mass. I drove up to the restaurant and parked, then leaned back in my seat to think for a moment. Charlene, I knew, would already be inside waiting to talk with me. But why? I hadn't heard a word from her in 6 years. Why would she have shown up now, just when I had sequestered myself in the woods for a week? I stepped out of the truck and walked toward the restaurant. Behind me, the last glow of a sunset sank in the west and cast highlights of earlier by a brief thunderstorm, and now the summer evening felt cool and renewed, and because of the fading light, almost surreal. A half moon hung overhead. As I walked, old images of Charlene filled my mind. Was she still beautiful, intense? How would time have changed her? And what was I to think of this manuscript she had mentioned? This ancient artifact found in South America that she couldn't wait to tell me about. I have a 2 hour layover at the airport, she said on the telephone. Can you meet me for dinner? You're going to love what this manuscript says. It's just your kind of mystery. My kind of mystery? What did she mean by that? Inside, the restaurant was crowded. Several couples waited for tables. When I found the hostess, she told me Charlene had already been seated and directed me toward a terraced area above the main dining room. I walked up the steps and became, hold on one second. Dory, Dory, can you quiet down for me, please? Thank you. She out there laughing like some shit is just hilarious. Like, bruh, unless Dave Chappelle just delivered a pizza, my nigga, bring it down a couple notches. Listen, I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. You understand? This is a dry run. This is a dry run. Oh, great rising, sis. I see y'all as. I see y'all as. I see you. Great rising. Peace and power. All right. Hold on. Let me. Mm. All right, cool. I walked up the steps and became aware of a crowd of people surrounding one of the tables. The crowd included two policemen. Suddenly, the policeman turned and rushed past me and down the steps. As the rest of the people dispersed, I could see past them to the person who seemed to have been the center of attention, a woman still seated at the table. Charlene. I quickly walked up to her. Charlene, what's going on? Is anything wrong? She tossed her head back in mock exasperation and stood up, flashing her famous smile. I noticed that her hair was perhaps different, but her face was exactly as I remembered it. Small, delicate features, wide mouth, huge blue eyes. You wouldn't believe it, she said, pulling me into a friendly hug. I went to the restroom a few minutes ago, and while I was gone, someone stole my briefcase. What was in it? Nothing of importance, just some books and magazines I was taking along for the trip. It's crazy. The people at the other tables told me someone just walked in, picked it up, and walked out. They gave the police a description, and the officer said they would search the area. Maybe I should help them look? No, no, let's forget about it. I don't have much time and I want to talk with you. I nodded and Charlene suggested we sit down. A waiter approached, so we looked over the menu and gave him our order. Afterward, we spent 10 or 15 minutes chatting in general. I tried to underplay my self imposed isolation, but Charlene picked up on my vagueness. She leaned over and gave me that smile again. So, what's really going on with you? She asked. I looked at her eyes, at the intense way she was looking at me. You want the whole story immediately, don't you? Always, she said. Well, the truth is, I'm taking some time for myself right now and staying at the lake. I've been working hard and I'm thinking about changing directions in my life. I remember you talking about that lake. I thought you and your sister had to sell it. Not yet, but the problem is property taxes. Because the land is so close to the city, the taxes keep increasing. She nodded. What are you going to do next? I don't know. Something different. She gave me an intriguing look. Sounds as if you're as restless as everyone else. I suppose, I said. Why do you ask? It's in the manuscript. There was a silence as I returned her gaze. Tell me about this manuscript, I said. She leaned back in her chair as if to gather her thoughts, then looked me in the eye again. I mentioned on the phone, I think that I left the newspaper several years ago and joined a research team or a firm that investigates cultural and demographic changes for the UN. My last assignment was in Peru. While I was there completing some research at the University of Lima, I kept hearing rumors about an old manuscript that had been discovered. Only no one could give me any of the details, not even at the departments of archaeology or anthropology. And when I contacted the government about it, they denied any knowledge whatsoever. One person told me that the government was actually working to suppress this document for some reason, although, again, he had no direct knowledge. You know me, she continued. I'm curious. When my assignment was over, I decided to stay around for a couple of days to see what I could find out. At first, every lead I pursued turned out to be another dead end. But then, while I was eating lunch in a cafe outside of Lima, I noticed a priest watching me. After a few minutes, he walked over and admitted that he had heard me inquiring about the manuscript earlier in the day. He wouldn't reveal his name, but agreed to answer all my questions. She hesitated for a moment, still looking at me intensely. He said the manuscript dates back to about 600 BC. It predicts a massive transformation in human society. Beginning when? I asked. In the last decades of the 20th century. Now? Yes, now. What kind of transformation is it supposed to be? I asked. She looked embarrassed for a moment, then with force said, the priest told me it's a kind of renaissance in consciousness, occurring very slowly. It's not religious in nature, but it is spiritual. We're discovering something new about human life on this planet, about what our existence means. And according to the priest, this knowledge will alter human culture dramatically. She paused again, then added, the priest told me the manuscript is divided into segments or chapters, each devoted to a particular insight into life. The manuscript predicts that in this time period, human beings will begin to grasp these insights sequentially, one insight then another, as we move from where we are now to a completely spiritual culture on earth. I shook my head and raised an eyebrow cynically. You really believe all this? Well, she said, I think. Look around, I interrupted, pointing at the crowd sitting in the room below us. This is the real world. You see anything changing out there? Just as I said that, an angry remark erupted from a table near the far wall, then a remark I couldn't understand, but which was loud enough to hush the entire room. At first, I thought the disturbance was another robbery, but then I realized it was only an argument. A woman appearing to be in her 30s was standing up and staring indignantly at a man seated across from her. No, she yelled. The problem is that this relationship is not happening the way I want it. Do you understand? It's not happening. She composed herself, tossed her napkin on the table, and walked out. Charlene and I stared at each other, shocked that the outburst had occurred at the very moment we were discussing the people below us. Finally, Charlene nodded toward the table where the man remained alone and said, it's the real world that's changing. How? I asked, still off balance. The transformation is beginning. Listen, I know I'm not supposed to do this. I'm just supposed to read, but this is that good shit right here. Ife, don't do it. This is the good shit right here. My man say people can't change. You see this shit. They're not changing. And this is true, she says, but the world is changing. I need you to catch that because a lot of us be discouraged, like shit ain't sweet and it ain't never gonna be sweet. But it don't have to be sweet. You ain't gotta work on changing the person when you change the environment. That's how you exercise the gin. It's how you get unwanted guests to fuck up out your house. It's how you have whole niggas quitting jobs. You make them uncomfortable. You change the environment. It's also the way you enable motherfuckers and get them to come and never leave. You make them comfortable. You change the environment. You understand? That's peace right there. Peace and power to you too. Peace and power. That's peace. You change the environment. Even yes, our bodies, our features, the shapes of our noses and our complexions and the grades of our hair, the texture, the color, even. B. Y'all ain't fucking with me. Listen, when I'm in Florida, my hair is a whole completely different brown than what it is when I spend my summer in Georgia. And I know it ain't the same sun. Niggas trying to, they got two sons, one for the plug and one for the program. All right. Listen, though, that's peace, changing the environment. All right. That helps in your personal lives, too. If you've been trying diligently to get your mother to change, to get your cousin to change, to get your husband to change, or your wife to change, if you change the environment, make it an environment that's conducive to the people and shit and the place and the goals that you're trying to achieve and shit. And just watch, shit'll fall in place. You feel me? Shit'll fall in place. I have people walk into my home and without me having to have a sign on the door that says, please take your shoes off, that's the frequency. They walk in like, oh, no, oh, I'm supposed to take my shoes off? Yeah, you stepping on the holy goddamn ground. All right. Yeah. All right, we don't know. All right, hold on. Say hold the fuck up, hold up. I had put the book down for a minute and had lost my spot. But all right, hold on. All right, hold on. Hold on. All right, we ready. We ready. We ready. We ready. Say the manuscript. Hold on. I'm not gonna get distracted no more, and that's how we gonna make this shit work. On everything. All right. So she decided to stay for a minute. All right. That's it. All right. Charlene and I stared at each other, shocked that the outburst had occurred at the very moment we were discussing the people below us. Finally, Charlene nodded toward the table where the man remained alone and said, "It's the real world that's changing." How? I asked, still off balance. The transformation is beginning with the first insight, and according to the priest, this insight always surfaces unconsciously at first as a profound sense of restlessness. Restlessness? Yes. What are we looking for? That's just it. At first, we aren't even sure. According to the manuscript, we're beginning to glimpse an alternative kind of experience, moments in our lives that feel different somehow, more intense and inspiring, but we don't know what this experience is or how to make it last. And when it ends, we're left feeling dissatisfied and restless with a life that seems ordinary again. You think this restlessness was behind the woman's anger? Yes, she just like the rest of us. We're all looking for more fulfillment in our lives, and we won't put up with anything that seems to bring us down. This restlessness, this restless searching is what's behind the me first attitude that's characterized the most recent decades, and it's affecting everyone from Wall Street to street gangs. She looked directly at me. And when it comes to relationships, we're so demanding that we're making them near impossible. Her remark brought back the memory of my last two relationships. Both had begun intensely, and both within a year had failed. When I focused on Charlene, again, she was waiting patiently. What exactly are we doing to our romantic relationships? I asked. I talked with the priest a long time about this, she replied. He said that when both partners in a relationship are overly demanding, when each expects the other to live in his or her world, to always be there to join in his or her chosen activities, an ego battle inevitably develops. What she said struck home. My two relationships had indeed generated interpower struggles. In both situations, we have found ourselves in a conflict of agendas. The pace has been too fast. We had too little time to coordinate our different ideas about what to do, where to go, what interests to pursue. In the end, the issue of who would lead, who would determine the direction for the day, had become an irresolvable difficulty. Because of this control battle, Charlene continued, the manuscript says we will find it very difficult to stay with the same person for any length of time. That doesn't seem very spiritual, I said. That's exactly what I told the priest, she replied. He said to remember that while most of society's recent ills can be traced to this restlessness and searching, this problem is temporary and will come to an end. We're finally becoming conscious of what we're actually looking for, of what this other, more fulfilling experience really is. When we grasp it fully, we'll have attained the first insight. Our dinner arrived, so we paused for several minutes as the waiter poured more wine and to taste each other's food. When she reached across the table to take a bite of salmon from my plate, Charlene wrinkled her nose and giggled. I realized how easy it was to be with her. Okay, I said, what is this experience we're looking for? What is this first insight? She hesitated as though unsure how to begin. This is hard to explain, she said, but the priest put it this way. He said the first insight occurs when we become conscious of the coincidences in our lives. She leaned toward me. Have you ever had a hunch or intuition concerning something you wanted to do? Some course you wanted to take in your life and you wondered how it might happen. And then, after you had half forgotten about it, focused on other things, you suddenly met someone or read something or went somewhere that led to the very opportunity you envisioned. Well, she continued, according to the priest, these coincidences are happening more and more frequently, and that when they do, they strike us as beyond what we would expect by pure chance. They feel destined, as though our lives have been guided by some unexplained force. The experience induces a feeling of mystery and excitement As a result, we feel more alive. The priest told me that this is the experience that we've glimpsed and that we're now trying to manifest all the time. More people every day are convinced that this mysterious movement is real and that it means something, that something else is going on beneath everyday life. This awareness is the first insight. She looked at me expectantly, but I said nothing. Don't you see? She asked. The first insight is a reconsideration of the inherent mystery that surrounds our individual lives on this planet. We're experiencing these mysterious coincidences, and even though we don't understand them yet, we know that they are real. We're sensing again, as in childhood, that there's another side of life that we have yet to discover, some other process operating behind the scenes. Charlene was leaning further toward me. This is random as fuck. Oh, we're reading the Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. Um, it is a refreshing experience to be able to tap into the child mind that you used to honor. It really does make things more simple and more real. Okay, it really does, because you're not closed off or shut off by fear, and so it's easy to explore. I remember when I was younger, um I used to think that I remember seeing midgets, because that's what we called them back then. It was a midget, it wasn't a little person or none of that shit, it was midgets. And me seeing the midgets would I thought that people came in all sizes. Like I thought, like, I don't know, like Tinkerbells and shit. I thought that, like, look, B, people could be any size. As an adult, I know that all adults have to be this height and this weight and this size and this age and ethnicity range. Listen, as a child, ain't none of that shit. Ain't no rules, B. Motherfuckers come in all sizes. And I used to think that, Great Rising Sis, I love you. I used to think that there were little Tinkerbell sized motherfuckers that worked in the traffic lights. And when my mother used to ask me what I want to be when I grow up, I'd be like, I want to control the lights and shit. And, you know, yeah, she was talking about traffic control and shit. I actually wanted to go little so I could like sit in the lights and shit and flip that bitch green when somebody been sitting too long. Ooh, wait. Wait. It's a couple things. Then I'm remember. What's some ridiculous shit you thought when you were little? My little sister used to tell me that when we grow up, and I get little. Like when she grow up and I get little, like she used to believe that our ages will alternate. And one more thing, I also remember when my father would have me and her to stir stuff to help him. Like he used to make banana pudding all the time, and when we were stirring it, she would always go the opposite direction of me, and I was afraid that the ingredients would unmix. So anyway, listen, anything is possible. Like we got law of physics and gravity and Murphy law and nigga law, Trump law and fucking martial law. We got all kind of law that stagnate our thought systems, that stagnate our freedom and our imagination. Like my children ask me all the time, Mom, you believe? And I believe in everything. I believe in everything. I believe there's enough space in this place for all things to exist and simultaneously. All right. And so anyway, let me get on back here. This awareness is the first insight. This is what we talking about. Hold on, let me figure out. Say that don't seem very spiritual. People not sticking in the same. Have you ever had the hunch? She tended the priest coincidence. Give me 1 second. Find city for destiny. Supplies have been guided. Priest told me. Said she looked at me expectantly. All right. She looked at me expectantly, but I said nothing. Don't you see? She asked. The first insight is a reconsideration of the inherent mystery that surrounds our individual lives on this planet. We're experiencing these mysterious coincidences, and even though we don't understand them yet, we know they are real. We're sensing again, as in childhood, that there's another side of life that we have yet to discover, some other process operating behind the scenes. Charlene was leaning toward me, gesturing with her hands as she spoke. You're really into this, aren't you? I asked. I can remember a time, she said sternly, when you talked about these kinds of experiences. Her comment jolted me. She was right. There had been a period in my life when I had indeed experienced such coincidences and had even tried to understand them psychologically. Somewhere along the way, my view had changed. I had begun to regard such perceptions as immature and unrealistic for some reason. I had stopped even noticing. I looked directly at Charlene, then said defensively, I was probably reading Eastern philosophy or Christian mysticism at that time. That's what you remember. Anyway, what you're calling the first insight has been written about many times, Charlene. What's different now? How is a perception of mysterious occurrences going to lead to a cultural transformation? Charlene looked down at the table for an instant and then back at me. Don't misunderstand, she said. Certainly, this consciousness has been experienced and described before. In fact, the priest made a point to say that the first insight wasn't new. He said individuals have been aware of these unexplained coincidences throughout history, that this has been the perception behind many great attempts at philosophy and religion. But the difference now lies in the numbers. According to the priest, the transformation is occurring now because of the number of individuals having this awareness all at the same time. What did he mean exactly? I asked. He told me the manuscript says the number of people who are conscious of such coincidence would begin to grow dramatically in the sixth decade of the 20th century. He said that this growth would continue until sometime near the beginning of the following century, when we would reach a specific level of individuals, a level I think of as a critical mass. The manuscript predicts, she went on, that once we reach this critical mass, the entire culture will begin to take these coincidental experiences seriously. We will wonder in mass what mysterious process underlies life on this planet. And it will be this question asked at the same time by enough people. Listen, not that this is relevant or no shit either, but you know how I do with my interruptions. I do believe that we brush the system recognizes the critical mass. The system recognizes, all right, that all at the same time, there's a wave of enlightenment or consciousness. They recognize that. And so it feels like little things they will do or plant to make sure you discredit those coincidences. And one of the most major things for me is we we already know we could talk to, like, I could text my sister Amisha, girl, I can't find my Vitamix, I need to fuck around and get another one. And she might be like, sis, you need to get the Ninja, that motherfucker gonna save you $150 and the bitch work just as sufficient. And then all the week Amazon is giving me ads no matter what site I'm on, suggesting I buy this food processor. All of them. I go on walmart.com to get pencils and shit, and these motherfuckers like, other people bought this. You know, fucking well, ain't nobody bought no goddamn food processor with no Tanaka Kandra pencils or whatever the fuck the school said the people needed. Anyway, a lot of these coincidences, like I said, we brushed them off now. But there have been times I have thought to myself, damn, my mama probably need an oil change. I need to ask her about that and shit. You know what I mean? I need to ask her if she done got an oil change. My dad be trying to stay on the shit, but let's be real, his memory be slipping a little bit sometimes. Then he might be like, baby, I'm sure I got the oil change. Nigga, that was this time last year. So I have to ask my mother, hold on. Great rising. All right, so I have to ask my mom about an oil change. So sometimes the thought will come, right? But I haven't mentioned it to her yet. I haven't done any of that yet. The plan isn't actually to go and tell my mama to go get an oil change. The plan is to take my mother's car to get an oil change the next time I'm with her. So I'm making a mental note, but still, so I see that the oil change is being suggested in the ads. All right. Like, listen, some of the time the shit is magical, and it's not always the white man and the system and supremacy in the program. You know, but the program will try to match your frequency to throw you off. Like other motherfuckers. Gotta wear the right mask, gotta wear the right face, you know. Anyway, that's how it works. But these small coincidences we are now paying a lot of attention to. There are a lot of people who would ordinarily brush me off because I'm a chatterbox or because I'm random or sporadic or whatever the fuck. But so many people support me, and they'll say, listen, I was on your video for 2 seconds, so I watched another video, and then your shit just popped up, and you was talking about the exact same shit I was going through. I was like, let me follow her and see what's popping. Yes, we're paying more attention to those coincidences, and there are a lot of things in place to help you to discredit them. Don't. Okay? Don't. Here we go. He said that this growth would continue until sometime near the beginning of the following century when we would reach a specific level of individuals, a level I think of as a critical mass. The manuscript predicts, she went on, that once we reach this critical mass, the entire culture will begin to take these coincidental experiences seriously. We will wonder in mass what mysterious process underlies human life on this planet. And it'll be this question asked at the same time by enough people that will allow other insights to also come into consciousness. Because according to the manuscript, when a sufficient number of individuals seriously question what's going on in life, we will begin to find out. The other insights will be revealed, one after the other. She paused to take a bite of food. And when we grasp the other insights, I asked, then the culture will shift. That's what the priest told me, she asked. And she said, I looked at her for a moment, contemplating the idea of a critical mass, then said, all this sounds awfully sophisticated for a manuscript written in 600 BC. I know, she replied. I raised the question myself, but the priest assured me that the scholars who first translated the manuscript were absolutely convinced of its authenticity, mainly because it was written in Aramaic, the same language in which much of the Old Testament was written. Aramaic in South America? How did it get there in 600 BC? The priest didn't know. Does his church support the manuscript? I asked. No, she said. He told me that most of the clergy were bitterly trying to suppress the manuscript. That's why he couldn't tell me his name. Apparently, talking about it at all was very dangerous for him. Did he say why most church officials were fighting against it? Yes, because it challenges the completeness of their religion. How? I don't listen. Because it challenges the completeness of their religion. That's what make Jesus Jesus as a Christian. That's what make God God as a Christian. That it been the same always, today, yesterday, gonna be the same always tomorrow. This is why as a child, I didn't swallow church. Now I understand as an adult that I always loved church. The thing was, I was always looking for something more cultural, not even spiritual, something more cultural than religious. Something cultural would tie me to a people. Something cultural would tie me to a land. Something cultural would give me my own God. I didn't need religion. I don't want a bunch of clapping and hacking. I want it. Culture changes with the people. Culture grows with the people. Culture says we eat this in this season, and now this animal don't live here no more, and now we eat this. Culture says we used to wear these animals for hides, and now these animals are here, so we wear these. Culture does that. Religion don't change nothing. Let's talk about the Old Testament and the New Testament. Then we make one exception. Listen, all right, because it challenges the completeness of their religion. When I first told my grandmother, like coming into my enlightenment, if nothing else, before we even begin to debunk the story that is Jesus, let us at least conclude that he is not a white man. Let us at least, and this is me having this conversation with my grandmother. Grammy, you have traveled far more than me. You've been there. You've been on expeditions and shit, traveling with church missions. You've seen these people. You know these people are not the same as what they've depicted them as. But even that, for my elder grandmother, even that was hard because you can't. She's been praying and honoring a white Jesus for far too long. Even if you make him black, you challenge the completeness of everything that it is. It ain't allowed to change. It ain't allowed to grow. That's what make it peace, motherfucker. That's also what makes it, for me, less empowering. That's also for me what makes it less empowering. The manuscript, it challenges the completeness of their religion. How? I don't know exactly. He didn't discuss it much, but apparently the other insights extend some of the church's traditional ideas in a way that alarms the church elders who think things are fine the way they are. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay. Just relax and leave it broke. I mean, let it float. All right. I see. The priest did say, Charlene went on, that he doesn't think the manuscript undermines any of the church's principles. If anything, it clarifies what is meant by these spiritual truths. He felt strongly that the church leaders would see this fact if they would try to see life as a mystery again, and then proceed through the other insights. Did he tell you how many insights there were? No, but he did mention the second insight. He told me it is a more correct interpretation of recent history, one that further clarifies the transformation. Did he elaborate on that? No, he didn't have time. He said he had to leave to take care of some business. We agreed to meet back at his house that afternoon, but when I arrived, he wasn't there. I waited 3 hours and he still didn't show up. Finally, I had to leave to catch my flight home. You mean you weren't able to talk with him anymore? That's right, I never saw him again. And you never received any confirmation about the manuscript from the government? None. And how long ago did this take place? Maybe about a month and a half. For several minutes, we ate in silence. Finally, Charlene looked up and asked, "So what do you think?" "I don't know," I said. Part of me remained skeptical about the idea that human beings really could change. But another part of me was amazed to think that a manuscript, which spoke in these terms, might actually exist. "Did he show you a copy or anything?" I asked. "No, all I have here are my notes." Again, we were silent. "You know," she said, "I had thought you would be really excited by these ideas." I looked at her. "I guess I need some proof. I need proof that this manuscript said what this manuscript says is true." She smiled broadly again. "What?" I asked. "That's exactly what I said too." "To whom? The priest?" "Yes. What did he say?" "He said that experience is the evidence." "What did he mean by that?" "He meant that our experience validates what the manuscript says." God damn, I love that shit. Listen, I'm gonna keep reading. He said experience is the evidence. What did he mean by that? He meant that our experience validates what the manuscript says. Listen, man, if you don't get the whole fuck on, you dope as fuck out here. I just want you to know that you the manuscript. Let it be known that after I read all of this shit, ain't nobody else who I'd have read this shit ever concluded this, but I know the truth, B. You are the fucking manuscript. Just like I know you the Bible, B. I know that because the church told me you the living fucking word. You know what I mean? It said the Bible, the living word. You the one who living, the book just sitting there dead. So you must be the living word. You speak, you got the tongue, what they said was the sword and all that shit. You must be the living word. Hey, now. Hey, you the living word. Your experience is what validates. Your experience is what validates. You got people who will tell you and you know and I can understand that a single person can't give you marital advice, and this is incorrect. This is in fucking correct. And don't you let nobody tell you, don't you sit silent and you watch the people you love sit in unhealthy relationships and you got a plug, you got a gym, but you don't feel like you qualified enough and shit to say something. Man, if you don't get the whole fuck out of here with that. I say your experience is what validates the things you say. Your experience is what validates your support and shit. Like, listen, motherfucker. You got education, that's validation. You got certification, that's validation. But you got experienceation. That's made up. You got oxidation. You got alienation. Oh shit. Okay, Ife. Ife, come back, baby. Come back. All right, mom. Come back, Ife. Come back. All right. All right. All right, y'all. I'm about to stop fucking around with the fuck around because we've got a story to read. He meant that our experience validates what the manuscript says. When we truly reflect on how we feel inside, on how our lives are proceeding at this point in history, we can see that the ideas in the manuscript make sense, that they ring true, she hesitated. Does it make sense to you? I thought for a moment. Does it make sense? Is everyone as restless as me? And if so, does our restlessness result from the simple insight, the simple awareness built up for 30 years that there is really more to life than we know, more that we can experience? I'm not sure, I finally said. I guess I need some time to think about it. I walked out to the garden beside the restaurant and stood behind a cedar bench facing the fountain. To my right, I could see the pulsating lights at the airport and hear the roaring engines of a jet ready for takeoff. What beautiful flowers, Charlene said from behind me. I turned to see her walking toward me along the walkway, admiring the rows of petunias and begonias which bordered the sitting area. She stood beside me, and I put my arm around her. Memories flooded my mind. Years ago, when we had both lived in Charlottesville, Virginia, we had spent regular evenings together talking. Most of our discussions were about academic theories and psychological growth. We had been fascinated by the conversations and by each other. Yet it struck me how platonic our relationship had always been. I can tell you, she said, how nice it is to see you again. I know, I replied. Seeing you brings back a lot of memories. I wonder why we didn't stay in touch, she asked. Her question took me back again. I recall the last time I had seen Charlene. She was telling me goodbye at my car. At the time, I felt full of new ideas and was departing from my hometown to work with severely abused children. I thought I knew how such children could transcend the intense reactions, the obsessive acting out that kept them from going on with their lives. But as time progressed, my approach had failed. I had to admit my ignorance. How humans might liberate themselves from their past was still an enigma to me. Looking back over the previous 6 years, I need somebody else to catch that shit. Listen, it's a lot of healers out here who go hard at it and then it don't work, and that's okay. You know what I mean? You gave it a good goddamn run. All right. It will always be a mystery to us how people transcend, how they liberate, how they get free of. All we can do is share the ways that we've liberated ourselves and hope that somebody somewhere will give you a plug that worked for you too. Looking back over the previous 6 years, I now felt sure the experience had been worthwhile. Yet I also felt the urge to move on, but to where, to do what? I had thought of Charlene only a few times since she had helped me crystallize my ideas about childhood trauma. And now here she was again, back in my life, and our conversation felt as exciting as before. I guess I got totally absorbed in my work, I said. So did I, she replied. At the paper, it was one story after another. I didn't have time to look up. I forgot about everything else. I squeezed her shoulder. You know, Charlene, I have forgotten how well we talked together. Our conversation seemed so easy and spontaneous. Her eyes and smile confirmed my perception. I know, she said, conversations with you give me so much energy. I was about to make another comment when Charlene stared past me toward the entrance to the restaurant. Her face grew anxious and pale. What's wrong? I asked, turning to look in that direction. Several people were walking toward the parking lot, talking casually, but nothing seemed out of the ordinary. I turned to face Charlene again. She still appeared alarmed and confused. What was it? I repeated. Over by the first row of cars. Did you see that man in the gray shirt? I looked toward the parking lot again. Another group was exiting through the door. What man? I guess he's not there now, she said, straining to see. She looked directly into my eyes. When the people at the other tables described the man who stole my briefcase, they said he had thinning hair and a beard and wore a gray shirt. I think I just saw him over there by the cars, watching us. A knot of anxiety formed in my stomach. I told Charlene I'd be right back and walked to the parking lot to look around, careful not to get too far away. I saw no one who fit the description. When I returned to the bench, Charlene took a step closer to me and said softly, do you suppose this person thinks I have a copy of the manuscript? And that's why he took my briefcase? He's trying to get it back? I don't know, I said, but we're going to call the police again and tell them what you saw. I think they ought to also check out the passengers on your flight. We walked inside and called the police, and when they arrived, we informed them of what had occurred. They spent 20 minutes checking each car, then explained that they could invest no more time. They did agree to check all the passengers boarding the plane that Charlene would be on. After the police had left, Charlene and I found ourselves standing alone again by the fountain. What were we talking about anyway? She asked. Before I saw that man, we were talking about us, I replied. Charlene, why did you think to contact me about all this? She gave me a perplexed look. When I was in Peru and the priest was telling me about the manuscript, you kept popping into my mind. Oh, yeah? I didn't think too much about it then, she continued. But later, after I returned to Virginia, every time I would think of the manuscript, I would think of you. I started to call several times, but I always got distracted. Then I received this assignment in Miami that I'm headed to now and discovered after I boarded the plane that I had a layover here. When I landed, I looked up your number. Your answering machine said to contact you at the lake only in emergency, but I decided it would be okay to call. I looked at her for a moment, unsure of what to think. Of course, I finally replied. I'm glad you did. Charlene glanced at her watch. It's getting late. I better get back to the airport. I'll drive you, I said. We drove to the main terminal and walked toward the embarkation area. I watched carefully for anything unusual. When we arrived, the plane was already boarding, and one of the policemen we had met was observing each passenger. When we approached, he told us that he observed everyone scheduled to board and no one fit the description of the thief. We thanked him, and after he had left, Charlene turned and smiled at me. I guess I'd better go, she said, reaching out to hug my neck. Here are my numbers. Let's keep in touch this time. Listen, I said, I want you to be careful. If you see anything strange, call the police. Don't worry about me, she replied. I'll be fine. For an instant, we looked deeply into each other's eyes. What are you going to do about this manuscript? I asked. I don't know. Listen for news reports about it, I guess. What if it's suppressed? She gave me another of her smiles. I knew it, she said. You're hooked. I told you you'd love it. What are you going to do? I shrugged. See if I can find out more about it, probably. Good. If you do, let me know. We said goodbye again and she walked away. I watched as she turned once and waved and disappeared down the boarding corridor. I walked to my truck and drove back to the lake, stopping only for gas. When I arrived, I walked out to the screen porch and sat in one of the rockers. The evening was loud with crickets and tree frogs, and in the distance, I could hear a whippoorwill. Across the lake, the moon had sunk lower in the west and sent a rippled line of reflection toward me on the water's surface. This evening had been interesting, but I was still skeptical about the whole idea of a cultural transformation. Like many people, I had been caught up in the social idealism of the 60s and 70s, and even in the spiritual interests of the 80s. But it was hard to judge what was really happening. What kind of new information could possibly alter the entire human world? It all sounded too idealistic and far fetched. After all, humans have been alive on this planet for a long time. Why would we suddenly gain insight into existence now at this late date? I gazed out at the water for a few more minutes, then turned off the lights and went into the bedroom to read. The next morning, I woke suddenly with a dream still fresh in my mind. For a minute or two, I stared at the bedroom ceiling, remembering it fully. That's a plug. You know what I mean? Um, a lot of the shit we talk about this briefly in all the circles I'm in. Um, Lucid dreams or vivid dreams and retaining the dreams, because that's the thing. My children will say, Mom, I didn't have a dream. And I try to remind them somewhere, somehow, I have learned or felt that we dream every single night. You don't remember them is the issue. You forget them that frequently, but indeed, you do dream every single night, sometimes multiple dreams. And of course, the same way laughing gas and a host of other medicines can have us outside of our minds, or I use laughing gas because people don't usually remember what the fuck they did or said, or alcohol because some drunks don't remember what the fuck they did or said. And it's a couple of other drugs that won't have you remembering who the fuck you didn't try it. But again, the chemicals that we take in, not just these chemicals that we know to be abrasive, but oftentimes the food, the chemicals and the unhealthy and processed foods and the preservatives and those things that we eat also do the same things. They cloud our judgment, our clarity, our fucking remembrance, and a whole lot of other shit. Yeah, so if I rob you, blame it on the biscuits. No, really. I ain't gonna rob nobody, and I don't want the biscuits either. But that does help to clean your diet so that there's less chemical interference, contributing to that, but also to be still. It also helps to wake naturally. If you go to bed early, that's the thing. When you start healing, you got to do one thing that require you to do one thing that require you to do one thing. But at least this way, it's not like going to the doctor where they give you one medicine and they tell you, Ife, you're gonna take this medicine for the thing you got going on with the pussy, but it's gonna give you a yeast infection. So you're gonna need to take this because it's gonna give the pussy something new. you, but your healing is the same way. Both of them gonna require a lot of you. You know what I mean? So you just want to pick who you're gonna pay. Who gonna pay you back. And so, like I said, one of the things that you should do is weed out as much chemical as you can. All right. But then once you do that, you also want to make sure that you rise naturally. You don't want to be jolted by an alarm clock. It's one of the most traumatic ways to yoke your spirit back to this realm. You know what I mean? Like, and it doesn't matter if you got Yogati. It don't matter if you got a Yogati alarm. You be like, but I got the nature sounds and the birds chirping. Nigga, ain't no birds chirping right now though. Otherwise, you could leave your fucking window open. Ain't no birds chirping. It's still false advertising. Really, the best way to wake up naturally and still be on time for everything you have to do is to go to bed at a decent hour. We are pushing ourselves and shit. We losing our power and shit because we got to stay up to watch power. Stop it, I say. Stop it, I say. And then we think that they play these programs late at night because they're adult programs. They play these programs late at night when your mind is at its weakest. Trust, they're not doing these. Now they know that your ass is awake because they want the ratings, right? So how come the presidents and shit, and when they be having these debates and whatever the fuck they be having, how come they don't have them 11 o'clock at night? Exactly. They want your ass alert when you're receiving that work. And when they should give you shit like power and even the shit we love like Queen Sugar, they want to give it to you in the late of the night when your defenses are down and you should be shutting it the fuck down. But anyway, like I said, they coming for you and shit. When you learn how hard they coming for you, and when you learn that they coming for you at every angle, it makes defense that much easier. You understand? To be forewarned is to be fucking forearmed. All right. All right, let's keep on going. Let's keep on going. So when you wake up, also, like I said, when you're waking up naturally, you want to sit still first. Don't move. Another thing, don't you got to go jump up to go and piss out the beer you had. Just stay for a minute. For me, it actually helps. I remember a lot of things I read on Google told me to write it, but by the time I was shuffled, even with a pen next to the bed, I would lose it. What's happened now is I began to start speaking them out loud. And I just say them out loud. And in fact, I'll share this one with you, and then I swear I'll get right back to the book. I had a dream last night that I was at a pool. And I call it a pool, but it wasn't a pool that I recognize as a pool. To be real, it was what white people call a pool. And I say white people because in all the movies I see where it be four white friends in the woods and they jumping off of some shit at camp, or they just having summer fun, or whatever the fuck they doing. They jump off this what looks like a cliff, but they land in this lake. And and it might be an ocean, but they call it a pool still. It's a pool of water, indeed it is, just not the pools I'm accustomed to. Anyway, in the dream, I was at a pool like this, and there was a little boy who I don't recognize in real life, but could draw his face because I remember him so vividly. Like if I saw him again, I would recognize him. That doesn't usually happen for me. You know, usually people are pretty faceless. I feel their energies and not see their faces. Anyway, I'm here at this pool, and there's a huge waterfall and all this shit. It's just beautiful. And the water is like maybe emerald green. It's beautiful. And this kid is sitting on the side by himself. And so to engage, I say, why don't we get in the water? You want, I'll go in the water with you. And he's like, I don't really want to go in the water, but if you want to go in, I'll go with you. And I'm like, you go with me? Oh, fucking, he's little. He got to be maybe 9 or 10, short, fat kid. Anyway, he says to me, he'll go in with me. And as we're going in, he looks very uneasy about it. And so I asked him, why don't you want to go? You don't know how to swim? He's like, it's just that the water is really warm. And I was like, it is. It feels really good. It almost feels like a bathtub, which is why it's so inviting. So I tell him, yeah, that's the only reason I'm in it. He's like, I just feel like when the water is warm like this, it's for the animals, like it's to support their environment. Like when it's cold, I don't know. I just feel like the warm is for the animals. And so as soon as he said this, I took his hand, we stepped a few more feet, and we went underwater. And I open my eyes underwater all the time. Bad habit. I be trying not to fuck my shit up, but I can't help it. Okay. I was raised swimming in the lake, and that's what the fuck we did. Okay. So I go under, and the minute I go under, I see a dolphin approaching us. Okay. And I'm amazed. There's a fucking dolphin approaching us. And so because I've never seen dolphins besides at an aquarium behind like a glass, real shit, I've never seen a dolphin yet. I don't really know how to receive this. So like we in nature, we're not at no park where it's a motherfucker telling us this the dolphin in this feed hour, his name Bobo the Schmobo. It's none of that going on. We don't know this motherfucker from Bobo from JoJo. Okay. So I grab this little boy's hand and I back out of the water and I step back so him and I can look over. And I encourage him to look over into the water too, so that we can at least see the dolphin when it comes closer. Babe, let me tell you, when it gets closer, I recognize that it's an alligator. It's not a dolphin. I saw a long nose and thought it was a dolphin, but it's an alligator. And so now I'm a little bit afraid. And so we step back. I'm a lot bit afraid. I'm a lot bit afraid. And we step back, and then the alligator comes out of the water. But when the alligator comes out of the water, the alligator like stands up, like mounts up, and then all of a sudden the alligator is like an alligator T-Rex type of shit or something. Like I don't even know what the fuck happened, because when I be about to get served in a dream, I wake the fuck up. These niggas ain't gonna take me out here. God damn it. I done had some elders tell me if you die in a dream, your ass don't wake up in the flesh. So no. Anyway, crazy enough, is the second dream I had about water, but there was a difference. The dream I had 2 days ago, my ex-husband and I were stuck in a shower, one of those stand-up showers, the glass shower with the door, and the water started to come up. And at first we thought it was cool, but then we realized that the door wouldn't open as the water kept coming up. And then the ceiling, we never noticed before this day that the ceiling was too high, so there was no going out over the shower. We were just in. And this was the very first time in a dream that it fucked me up, because I had to choose to die. Like I expect death and I respect death, because I expect and respect all cycles. But this was different because I had to accept that this was it. Like it was completely different. Never in my life, or in my sleep, had that ever happened. I remember telling him I love him, and it wasn't just it wasn't just and I love you. Like I always love on him and I love on you. It wasn't just that. It was a goodbye in that shit. There was a goodbye in that shit. Like I don't think I waited for the water to come up any higher. A part of me feel like that I love you said that I was about to swallow as much of it as I could and go ahead and make it easy. I don't know for sure and shit, but I have been having a lot of the water dreams, and I don't need nobody to be like, Queen, you know what that dream mean? Because a bitch be talking to spirit enough. You ain't got to tell me what your Lord said, because mine's is here and able. Okay? Here and able. All right. So thank y'all for letting me share all of my business with you. We've been on here for an hour too, y'all. We've been on here for an hour too. Let me see how much left in this chapter. Oh, that's peace. It's only a page or so left, so that's perfect. All right. So he awoke with a dream fresh on his mind. For a minute or two, I stared at the bedroom ceiling, remembering it fully. I had been making my way through a forest, searching for something. The forest was large and exceptionally beautiful. In my quest, I found myself in a number of situations in which I felt totally lost and bewildered, unable to decide how to proceed. Incredibly, at each of these moments, a person would appear out of nowhere, as though by design, to clarify where I needed to go next. I never became aware of the object of my search, but the dream had left me feeling incredibly upbeat and confident. And I'm gonna stop one more time, because I got to tell you, for me, that's been the case for a long time, before I knew myself, before I had self-awareness. All right, before I had before I consciously chose a path of enlightenment. Right, I would look at my dreams, and my dreams were very literal. If somebody betrayed me in a dream, I would be looking for that sister to betray me in real life. If I got in a car accident in a dream, I would be looking for me to be in a car accident in real life. There are lots of times I felt like they might have been premonitions and not dreams. So there are a lot of things that I let fear, not even my gut, but I let fear dictate how I move. Now that I understand the way spirit communicates with me, which is not the same all the time from person to person, now I understand spirit communicates to me with feelings. All right, not images, but feelings. So if this is it, so spirit might show one sister a snowstorm in a dream. All right, she might show one sister a snowstorm in a dream, and might tell the sister, this is how this sister knows that a snowstorm is coming. In mine, there will be whatever the fuck is going on. I might be getting some good wang and things in that dream, but I will remember how I felt in the dream. I might say, yeah, I met a man at a bar. We went home. We had the most beautiful love. It was dope as fuck. I was enjoying him. And then I remember at the end of our sex, after we had an orgasm, instead of me having an orgasm, I felt cold, like freezing cold. Notice don't mean the next nigga who dick me down is about to leave me out in the cold or push me out in December. It don't mean I'm be gone till November. What it means is the cold is coming. The cold is coming. So spirit definitely communicates to me with feelings. So even when people show up in my dreams, I know that um when Amisha shows up in my dream, spirit is talking to me about the way that I mother. You know what I'm saying? When Martina shows up in one of my dreams, spirit is talking to the pop in me, the freak in me. Ooh, Martina, girl, listen. Well, it's that way. When Robin shows up in one of my dreams, I know it's time to stop bullshitting and it's time to do work. You know, because I can kick the shit all day long, but behind the scenes, as Zion say, when you gonna show them people behind the camera? Fuck you, okay? That's my 10-year-old. Yeah, when it's time to pull out the cornmeal and the cascadia and shit, when it's time to do work, I will know spirit is asking me, the ancestors are asking me for the honor. It's time to pay dues when Robin shows up in a dream. So for me, it's always how that person and that's because that's how Robin makes me feel. When she's around me, I don't want to go shopping. I don't want to go watch TV or go out to eat. When she's around me, I want to be quiet and I want to worship. And so when she show up in a dream, I know spirit is telling me, you know how you feel when you feel her? Feel that shit, get to that shit. Anyway, just log your own dreams and try to make a habit of writing your own dreams instead of asking all your friends and asking Google what they mean. If you begin to log your dreams and then as life occurs, you'll begin to see exactly what spirit means. You'll get to a point where, yeah, I've had a sister say, you know what? I have violent dreams 4 days before my cycle all the time. And it's been happening my whole life, but I never put the correlation in it. I never put it together until I started writing it down. So write those things down. Yeah, you got she's got that magic. All right, we're gonna keep on pushing because we almost done. All right. We almost up out of here. Um, okay, we say he woke up from the dream. Okay, woke up from the dream. In my quest, I found myself in a number of situations in which I felt totally lost and bewildered, unable to decide how to proceed. Incredibly, each of these moments, a person would appear out of nowhere as though by design to clarify where I needed to go next. I never became aware of the object of my search, but the dream had left me feeling incredibly upbeat and confident. I sat up and noticed a beam of sunlight coming through the window across the room. It sparkled with suspended dust particles. I walked over and pulled back the curtain. The day was radiant, blue sky, bright sunshine, a stiff breeze gently rocked the trees. The lake would be rippled and glistening this time of day, and the wind chilly against a swimmer's wet skin. I walked outside and dove in. I surfaced and swam out to the middle of the lake, turning on my back to look at the familiar mountains. The lake rested in a deep valley where three mountain ridges converged, a perfect lake site discovered by my grandfather in his youth. It had now been 100 years since he had first walked these ridges, a child explorer, a prodigy growing up in a world that was still wild with cougar and boar and Creek Indians that lived in primitive cabins up in the North Ridge. He had sworn at the time that one day he would live in this perfect valley with its massive old trees and 7 springs, and finally he had. Later, to build a lake and a cabin and to take countless walks with a young grandson. I never quite understood my grandfather's fascination with this valley, but I had always tried to preserve the land, even when civilization encroached, then surrounded. From the middle of the lake, I could see a particular rock outcropping near the crest of the North Ridge. The day before, in the tradition of my grandfather, I had climbed to that overhang, trying to find some peace in the view and in the smells and the way the wind whirled in the treetops. And as I had sat up there surveying the lake and the dense foliage in the valley below, I had slowly felt better, as if the energy and the perspective were dissolving some block in my mind. A few hours later, I had begun talking with Charlene and hearing about the manuscript. I swam back and pulled myself up on the wooden pier in front of the cabin. I knew all of this was too much to believe. I mean, here I was hiding out in these hills, feeling totally disenchanted with my entire life. When out of the blue, Charlene shows up and explains the cause of my restlessness, quoting some old manuscript that promises the secret of human experience. Yet I also knew that Charlene's arrival was exactly the sort of coincidence of which the manuscript spoke, one that seemed too unlikely to be a mere chance event. Could this ancient document be correct? Have we been slowly building, in spite of our denial and cynicism, a critical mass of people conscious of these coincidences? Were humans now in a position to understand this phenomenon and thus, finally, to understand the purpose behind life itself? What, I wondered, would this new understanding be? Would the remaining insights in the manuscript tell us, as the priest had said? I faced a decision. Because of the manuscript, I felt a new direction open in my life, a new point of interest. The question was what to do now. I could remain here, or I could find a way to explore further. The issue of danger entered my mind. Who had stolen Charlene's briefcase? Was it someone working to suppress the manuscript? How could I know? I thought about the possible risk for a long time, but finally my mood of optimism prevailed. I decided not to worry. I would be careful and go slowly. I walked inside and called the travel agency with the largest ad in the yellow pages. The agent with whom I spoke said he could indeed arrange a trip to Peru. In fact, by chance, there was a cancellation I could feel, a flight with reservations already confirmed with a hotel in Lima. I could have the whole package and at a discount, he said, if I could leave in 3 hours. 3 hours, Ashe. And that's the end of chapter 1. All right, that's the end of chapter 1. So listen, that's the end of chapter 1. I'm going to type this link in again. Okay. Say, so if you want to rock with me while I read the rest of it, say it's going to be book after book after book after book. $9 a month. I'm going to give you the Patreon, right? This link is, this tier is called the Celestine Prophecy. As we go from book to book to book, I'll always change the tier name so you'll know what it is, what we're reading. But it'll also always be a backlog. So if you decide when we start reading Nutricide that you want to go and do the Celestine Prophecy, that'll be available to you. All right. Patreon is $9 a month. It bills once a month around the first of the month. All right. So you got time to put your foot in the water and shit. You know. All right, what you got to do. I'm going to go ahead and give you this again. I said, and if you rocking with me and there's a book that you want to suggest or encourage us to read, I'm with it. I also encourage you to fast from TV as much as possible. Like I said, as much as possible. I think I'm going on maybe 3 weeks now into the TV fast, but listen, yo, my Spanish game. Oh, oh, boom. Listen, I'm a whole Mexican out here. Okay. Okay, let me share this with you. All right, so go on patreon.com. Also, I need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. I know they be like, damn girl, you want all our attention and all our little currency. I need 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We almost there. You know what I mean? We almost there. It's like log into all your different emails and subscribe so I can hit this number. I'm almost there. You feel me? Matter of fact, I'll send a prize. I'll start watching the subscribers between the 909th subscriber and the 1,000th subscriber. I'll put all those names in a drawing and I'll send that person one of whatever books we read. All right. Depends on how long it take me to get there, but whatever book we're currently reading at that time, that's the book I'll give to one of the people who support it. So if you already got an email and you hear and shit, get another one. Oh shit, got Gmail giving them out free, and your girl need the help. Your girl need the help. All right, I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And y'all on Facebook, so I'll make sure I communicate all that shit to you there too. Mwah. Peace, y'all. I love you and thank you. I ain't shit without you, and that's on everything. On God, B. On God. All right.